Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I've got our host, John O'Dwyer. Do you want to welcome everyone?
Hey guys, thanks for coming. I appreciate Steve taking time out for this, and Tony is an excellent host, so I hope you have fun, learn something.
Great. So I would just want to touch base that we started this webinar series just over a year ago based on feedback from O'Dwyer's readers. The 2023 version of that survey is in the field right now. I hope to have a link that I can share with you, but I can share it with everyone after this event if you'd like to take that survey and share your feedback on what content you'd like to see, speakers, topics, and always, how long, because that's one of the things you told us is you like 30 to 35-minute webinars. So I'll quickly introduce Steve Cody today. I loved his LinkedIn that says he's a climber, a comedian, and a dog lover, not necessarily in that order. And that reminds me to ask you, Steve, last month's guest, Adam Ritchie, asked where you came up with the name Peppercomm.
Yeah, it was very strategic, Tony and John. It was named in honor of my late black lab, Pepper.
Right.
There you go.
You used to love those ads, Steve. You used to run in the print ads, always with the dog. Fantastic.
Yes, we did. And Pepper is in doggy heaven. She's on the webinar as well.
Right.
Okay. So we talked about the title, Empathetic Leadership Begins with Self-Deprecating Humor. Steve, talk about how can mastering the art of stand-up and improvisational humor make me a better leader, make people listening better leaders, better communicators, or both of those things?
Yeah, I think self-deprecating humor is fundamental to empathetic leadership. Because if you are not able to be open to your own faults, your own foibles, your own mistakes, and admit them and, kind of poke fun at yourself, you're going to have a very tough time engaging, especially with the younger Gen Z audiences who are really looking for authenticity, empathy, sympathy, vulnerability. So I think the hallmark of a great leader today is understanding the power of self-deprecating humor. Self-deprecating humor can immediately relieve the tension in any sort of meeting, whether it's a staff meeting, whether it's a new business presentation, a client meeting, etc. I usually couch most of my, whether it's verbal or written comments by saying, I know you're either going to delete or ignore this idea, but here it is. And sure enough, they either ignore or delete it, but they know that they have the ability to do that, and that gives them a freedom to experiment and to have fun and to posit all sorts of ideas that may be out there. So I've always believed in poking fun at myself in a genuine way so that I open up the rooms and I open up the minds to others. I'm all about the best idea winning, and I think self-deprecating humor is a fast track to empathetic leadership.
Thank you for that. I've known you for a while. We met through the Institute of PR. So I want to ask, are there examples that you can share about where humor-based training has solved a client problem or delivered, and here's the key word, measurable results?
Yeah, we have, obviously I can't name names, but we have, the interesting thing, Tony, is that the most serious organizations are the ones who have embraced stand-up and improvisational comedy to help them bridge all sorts of gaps and solve all sorts of challenges. So case in point, we worked with a major global consulting firm right after the end of the pandemic last spring. And for the very first time, they were bringing their global communicators together in Orlando. And there was every conceivable divide you could imagine. Those who had been with the organization prior to the pandemic had a lot of face-to-face time with senior management. Those who'd been hired during the pandemic, people from all sorts of different countries, cultures, generational divides, Gen Z all the way to boomer and beyond. And what we did is, the beauty of stand-up and improvisational comedies, we broke down all those silos and we got them to perform stand-up comedy, which is not about a priest, a rabbi, and a minister walk into a bar. It's all about talking about things that get you upset, that made you feel like an underdog in a certain situation, or perhaps was something that was cringeworthy in your youth. that you feel comfortable sharing now, and it humanizes people. And the individuals within that particular group not only got to know each other in new and different ways, but at the end of the day, we had them doing improv sessions in which they were working together, and we purposely broke them up by region, by age, pre-pandemic, during pandemic, et cetera. And we asked them to come up with a hypothetical product, come up with a name, come up with the consumer need, how you would launch it. We gave them 5 minutes to do it, and each team presented. And at the end, one of the measurable results was we got more out of our 5-minute improv session than we have in the last 2 years combined. And afterwards, we checked for collaboration, collegiality, and support, and it was off the charts. So people want to belong. There's an article in today's CEO Daily. I don't know if you read Alan Murray's CEO Daily, but the Surgeon General went on record saying that loneliness is the #1 problem in America right now. 1 out of 2 Americans are lonely. And the Surgeon General said that employers can play a major role with employees in terms of helping them deal with the anxiety, the isolation, the depression that comes with loneliness. And the ideal remedy for that is laughter. Laughter brings us together.
Well, that was a great case study. Talk to me, IPR talks a lot about research. I'm a research guy. Talk to me about the research. Is there research that backs up the claim that laughter supports improved workplace morale, performance, productivity, employee retention?
There's none. I'm making all this up, Tony. If I were to print out all of the research that's been done that proves that laughter and humor can make for a better workplace and that humor in business is a powerful antidote, I think the stack would be higher than Mount Everest. I mean, there's everything from the Harvard Business Review, which has run multiple articles. UC Berkeley has published any number of articles. There's a Harvard Business School professor who's written a book about it. There is a stand-up comedy is now a required course at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. There's a great book written by the 2 academics called Humor Seriously, in which they have primary and secondary research that proves that humor not only improves culture, but can also help salespeople not only close more sales, but sell at a premium price. Laughter works because when we're laughing, for a moment, if I make you laugh, Tony, for that nanosecond, you fall in love with me, and we can take that offline. But that laughter stimulates the same endorphins as eating chocolate and falling in love. So if I make that connection and I make you laugh, and I have that moment, I can build on that moment to deepen rapport and to differentiate myself, whether I'm looking for a job, whether I'm pitching a piece of new business, whether I'm trying to connect with other people across the organization. It's an unbelievable resource.
Well, you just made me think of something we talked about when we first started this conversation around this webinar. Is I said something about a joke, and you said it's not about jokes. So how do you differentiate humor and self-deprecating humor and jokes? Like you said, a minister and a rabbi walked into a bar.
We're all about storytelling, not joke telling. So what we want and what we do in our training is we give demonstrations. And the beauty of what we do is it's not Peppercomm, a PR firm, teaching stand-up and improvisational comedy. We partner with professional comedians and academics so that you have an expert who knows everything that a stand-up comedian knows that a business executive should know, and a business executive who immediately translates what you've just learned in terms of stand-up improvisation to your day-to-day work jobs. And I share all sorts of anecdotes about how I've used humor to turn around a new business presentation, better connect with my employees, help attract and recruit great people. Knock on wood, we've had one of the lower turnover rates in the PR profession over the past 3 years. I attribute that to comedy. So it's a big, big differentiator.
Switching gears for a minute, talking about clients, we often are dealing with very serious executives in very serious businesses. Can you talk about how do you make laughter appropriate in those workplaces, in those scenarios?
Sure, it begins with whoever is sitting or standing or some combination thereof in the corner office. If he or she is not open to self-deprecating humor and isn't wired that way, it's not going to work. So we've seen countless examples just in the past couple of weeks of tone-deaf CEOs either saying something at town hall meetings or congratulating someone on social for getting rid of his dog so he could come back to work full time. Those CEOs will never embrace humor, and those cultures would be absolutely the wrong place to bring humor. It's interesting, we had a conversation with one CCO where we were talking about all the things that humor could do for his organization, and he said, Steve, not only do we not laugh at my company, we don't even smile. If I were to bring this to my CEO, I would be fired. So I felt badly for him, but I understood if it doesn't start with the corner office and the CEO or whoever the decision maker is, isn't open to being empathetic, vulnerable, and self-deprecating, it won't take.
Yeah, you remind me, working in the research world, my colleagues, not so much talk about humor, but Dungeons and Dragons and Star Trek. So it's a different thing. Talking about the seriousness of the workplace again for a moment more. We keep hearing, especially in the news this week, about cancel culture. Talk about the risks of injecting humor into a workplace when almost anything you say or write can be offensive to an individual or group or community.
Yeah, it's a very real challenge. And what we do before we engage with any client is to make sure we conduct a lot of due diligence. We need to understand what is and is not appropriate, what corporate culture, corporate vernacular is, et cetera. We need to know what the challenges, problems are. We need to know if there's any skeletons in the closet in terms of, harassment, workplace issues in the past that we might, unknowingly unearth. So we conduct an enormous amount of due diligence to make sure that when we lead these sessions, they are appropriate to that client's culture. And then we also say, this is not about becoming America's next funniest comedian. This is about becoming a better storyteller. So this is not, you're not performing at Caroline's at midnight on a Saturday. This is a work environment. So make this workplace appropriate. And when in doubt, leave it out. And then we demonstrate a couple of different types of comedy and what is and is not appropriate for that particular organization. And just as a follow-up, in all the years we've been doing this at Peppercomm, the stand-up and improvisational comedy has given us the guardrails so that we know what we can and cannot say within the organization and to each other. And knock on wood, we have been free of any sort of workplace issues because of that. So it gives us an amazing ability to have fun, but have fun within the guidelines and parameters that are appropriate for Peppercomm.
And I like when we first started talking about this, you emphasized self-deprecating because it's maybe a safer path or less risky path to say, let's laugh at me in front of a client or in a sales situation or whatever, as opposed to let's laugh at something at your organization, which may be a flashpoint or that landmine that I talked about, keeping your foot over.
Yes, Tony. Yes, and as we say in improv, yes, and the sad thing about public relations in particular is that too many PR people take themselves far too seriously. We, the public relations profession, we're not ending world hunger. We're not curing cancer. We're representing organizations that are doing that work, but we're communicators. We're great at what we do. But lighten up. We are not saving the world. So I think if you take your business seriously, your client's business seriously, but you loosen up a little bit and realize that you're not Mother Teresa. You're the CEO of a PR firm or you're the CCO of a Fortune 500 company. And yes, business is important, but don't take yourself too seriously. Life's too short.
Well, that's a great setup for my next question, because one of the funniest stories in my career comes from my time working at United States Army Recruiting Command, which, you said we're not out to save the world, but in that case, that's kind of what they're doing. So is comedy right for every organization? You talked about the corner office, but is there a broader cultural assessment that you do or to try to see what the fit is?
Absolutely. The stars have to be aligned. And the curious thing is organizations that when you look at their TV commercials, their online ads are all about fun and laughter, et cetera. And yet when we talk to those organizations about doing stand-up or improv, they say, oh, that's not who we are. You know, we are very nose to the grindstone, quota driven. You know, you either meet your quota or you're gone. Comedy would have no place here. So the fascinating thing over the past 10 years is that the more serious the organization, and we've worked with defense contractors who are building, you know, Patriot missiles. Doesn't get any more serious than that, but they were losing government contracts because their engineers were using 100-page PowerPoint slides and looking at the slides and not the audience. So we worked with literally these rocket scientists to help them understand stand-up and improvisational humor so that they could better connect with the government decision makers. And lo and behold, they started winning contracts.
Well, that's the funny story, and it ties back to Pepper. The joke in the Department of Defense was, if a contractor tells you something is going to take a year, think dog years. It's 7 years. If they tell you 2 years, that means never. So
the same is true with the Peppercomm promise to any client. If we say it'll be done in 1 week, that means 7 weeks.
Perfect. So if I'm sitting across the table from you or your team, how do I determine if my organization, my workplace, might accept laughter and humor as a catalyst for innovation? Because that's what we're all really talking about. How do we come up with new ideas, breakthrough ideas for our clients?
It's really all about active listening, which is one of the byproducts of stand-up and improvisational comedy. So I would actively listen to whether or not, you know, something I would say is met with a smile, a chuckle, or a frown, or somebody multitasking. So I can immediately read, you know, the audience, you know, and most of the Peppercommers can, in terms of whether or not, you know, a client organization will embrace our humor, or we have other clients where it's just strictly business. Just do your job, give us the results, and let's move on. But we have other much deeper relationships with clients where humor has become a big part of our clients kind of letting their hair down and being human to us. So we know so many things about our clients in terms of their dogs, their kids, their sports pursuits, et cetera, because we've been able to use our stand-up comedy to actively listen to our clients and say, yes, we can have fun with these guys. We have to produce results, but they're looking to enjoy our company. So let's build on that. So it's not right for every client agency relationship, but when you're trained in stand-up and improvisational comedy, you're attuned to the nonverbals and you're an active listener, and you're able to read the room so much better. And that's what I found after doing 2 years of stand-up very poorly, that I was never going to make it to Hollywood, but that a lot of the skills I was learning were just spot on in terms of the business world.
I really like that, because when you think of humor, you think of something that's sort of, you know, banana peel kind of thing, but it sounds like there's a process of actively listening, picking up on nonverbal cues, and then you bring that information back, or your team members bring that information back and say, yeah, this is a good fit, this is not a good fit, here's the relationship, how deep it's going to go. So
that's absolutely correct. And the other thing that stand-up and improv teaches is to get to the point very quickly. You know, the best comedians will do a setup. They'll do A, B, and then the unexpected is C. So that learning skill can be translated to pitching a Wall Street Journal article about a very serious product or service from a financial services firm we represent. So a lot of the skills in terms of coming up with a great and unexpected subject line and coming up with a great and unexpected opening sentence is also a major differentiator and a great way in which we've been able to better connect with the media and get results for our clients. We're not writing long, passive run-on sentences. We're hitting them with the unexpected. And that's the other great outcome of stand-up and improv.
So I put something in the chat. People are invited to send in their questions. I have a few more, and then I have a few that have already come in. So when you started stand-up as a stand-up performer, what clicked for you to say, you know what, this would benefit my colleagues, my company, to bring this to the office?
It was, yeah, well, I went through 2 years of performing in front of 3 people on Thursday nights at 9 o'clock and getting met with either complete silence or listening to what they'd be doing after my show. So when you're met with that kind of overwhelming passivity, when you go into a new business meeting or a client meeting, it almost seemed like a walk in the park. So I felt so much more comfortable, Tony, whether it was delivering a speech, sitting on a panel, getting ready for a big new business presentation. I had been through hell and back in terms of performing at some of the really sleazy, shabby, lower Manhattan comedy clubs. And the cool thing about it was that the people who were performing on the stage with me were retired cops, taxi cab drivers, high school kids. So I was interacting with a whole section of this, the world that, in as a PR agency, I would never have access to. So I saw a whole different side of the world. And I learned so much by watching some of these other performers that I saw business is very much a performance. It's performance based in terms of metrics, but it's also performance based in terms of likability. So if you can bring likability into whether you're looking for a new job, whether you're looking for a raise, whether you're up against 2 or 3 other firms, and you've got that likability factor, you'll get the gig.
When you decided to bring this back to your office, and said, everybody's going to take improv training, stand-up training, was this embraced? Was there pushback? Can you talk a little bit about what was that experience like for your team?
Sure. Well, when I came to the realization that comedy was helping me become a better business executive, I sprung this on our management committee. At the end of a very contentious day-long retreat, I brought my professional comedian comedy coach in, and I said, guess what? For the next hour, you're going to be performing stand-up comedy, and if looks could kill, I would not be here. But they each went through it, and it's an amazing support system that I've never seen before. So we told them what to do. Just talk about 1 or 2 things that get you upset. Go up there and talk about it. And the thing is, they all pulled for each other, and that's what happens in these. Everybody wants everyone else to succeed, because when you go up there, you want people to laugh at you as well. And no matter what they talked about that made them upset, they were funny. And as soon as we were done, they said, we must roll this out to the entire agency. So we've done that, and there's so many different variations of improv and stand-up. We tie it in with our charitable fundraising at the end of the year. The employees get to pick whatever charity, and then IMC and 7 or 8 different Peppercommers make their professional Manhattan stand-up comedy debuts, and we typically raise $5,000 for a charity on a given night. So it's just a beautiful thing.
Very cool. Before we field a few questions, and we're great on time, Steve. We're just clipping right through, like you said, get right to the point. I'd like to circle back to the beginning of the conversation on the value of stand-up and improv training. You offer that course to people who don't work at your organization, right?
Yeah, we actually have 4 different offerings depending upon what sort of challenges the organization is facing. So we have some that are just basic stand-up. We have some that are very sophisticated improvisational training sessions. For example, with a global automobile manufacturer, their senior management team was getting ready to do their strategic offsite to do their 2023 planning. We spent a whole day with them putting them through improv sessions so that they broke down all the barriers, they opened their minds, they collaborated with each other so that when they went into that strategic planning session, they were ready to hit the ground running. They all enjoyed each other's company, and they got the job done without any contention, any disagreement, et cetera.
So you just reminded me of another question. So is there a prologue or something like this is going to happen? Or is it, as you say in your management meeting, where you spring it on them? Is it better if people are prepared, or does that raise anxiety and tension and just have them walk in cold and say, this is something you're going to do?
We let the client decision maker decide how much we want to let the participants know in advance. They certainly know that they'll be doing stand-up and improvisational training. They may be told this is what the end goal is. We will always do a pre and post survey to find out, what are the problems today. In one instance, the word friction came across from 80% of the participants. There was just a lot of friction. Nobody was cooperating. So we wanted to test for that after the 3 sessions with them. And friction went way down to like 15% in collaboration, collegiality, et cetera. So it's a case-by-case basis. They are always deer in the headlights at the beginning of our sessions, Tony, and at the end, we are swarmed by them and they say, we have to do this for my division. I want this done for our group over in England. So once they experience it and once they get past the fear, they get it. And it's almost like a drug. It's an amazing behavioral psychology thing to observe.
So I just want to point out, I put in the chat, you send an email to humor@peppercomm.com, Peppercomm with 2 M's, for a discount on a training session. Thank you for that, Steve. But you just reminded me of one of the questions that came in the chat. Is there an example, and somebody, I love to use the word stoic. Is there an example of, you said you're in the headlights to embracing. Can you give an example without naming names or anything of a brand that went from that stoic sort of traditional organization to transforming to something that embraced this humor and successfully?
Yes, without naming names, we were engaged by a consumer goods company that had 3 divisions: dental floss, toothpaste, and mouthwash. And the dental floss people didn't get along with the toothpaste people, and the toothpaste people and the dental floss people hated the mouthwash people. So we were engaged for 6 separate sessions to break down those silos, to get them to work together, to get them to like each other. And the pre and post was just remarkable. They were all rinsing and repeating together as a team. They were collaborating, and the productivity soared. The end results in terms of getting more cooperation, collaboration, getting everybody on the same page or in the same sync, if you will, was just remarkable. So it works beautifully. It works really well in a post-merger acquisition situation where you've got 2 different cultures that are clashing with each other. So laughter and humor is a great way to break down those barriers and get them to work together.
I wonder if that's the next challenge for you, is to write the humorous children's book about the toothpaste and the dental floss and the mouthwash not playing well together, and how you made that happen.
If I get the right offer, I'll say yes, Tony.
So a similar question is can you think of again, not naming names or in any way identifying anyone, but is there somebody that went through this process that you just saw, wow, they got more out of this than anybody else? Or on the flip side, anybody that just you saw resistance throughout and you felt like, I thought they were going to make it through, but it just didn't. My instinct was wrong.
Yeah, the one of the other interesting things that I've observed over whatever it is, a decade plus, is that the people you think won't do well, the introverts who for the last 6 months or a year really have just either sat in their cubicle or their apartment at home and really not contributed, when we get them on stage, and we do all of our training with our employees at the Westside Comedy Club during lunch. So they are in an actual comedy club. And what invariably happens, Tony, is that the introverts excel, and those who you think, the extroverts who you think will absolutely kill it, either don't kill it or just go on and on and on and never get to the point. So it's really, the other thing that it's done for us is it's identified stars that we did not know were stars. So there are many instances over the past 10 years where somebody who was seen as an introvert and someone we would not bring into a new business presentation absolutely destroyed it on stage and was incredibly likable, if not lovable. And we started inviting her onto new business presentations, and we were getting rave reviews from the prospects. So you never know. It's a great way to uncover new talent when that talent is feeling introverted or, a little reluctant to stand up and speak out, if you put them through stand-up comedy and improvisational training, you'll find there's some hidden gems in your organization.
I feel like we have a headline for John O'Dwyer: identifying stars that we didn't know were stars. There's a story there.
There you go.
I love that. So I pulled out the audience questions and I ran them by you. I want to say, if anybody else has questions, please put them in the chat. We're right at 30 minutes, so this is perfect. Next month, we're going to be featuring Mark Riggs of Pemberton, talking about the do's and don'ts of growing your agency business. And if you have ever seen Mark speak at PRSA, spoiler alert, it's mostly about the don'ts. Also, I had a conversation this morning with the people who are supporting the Global Accessibility Awareness Day on May 18th, and we're talking about doing a webinar with them based on some research we just did to understand, who in your community might be suffering from a disability or working with a disability that you may not even know. So with those quick announcements, Steve, any closing thoughts, anything you want to hit again? I guess get to the point, make your message succinct.
Yeah, again, I would just say that I think this is the perfect time to inject laughter and humor in your workplace. We live in a world of uncertainty, divisiveness, and negativity. And employees are looking to their employers as the last best refuge for sanity. And I believe laughter can bring us together, can knock down silos, divides, and make us, and bring some joy, which almost sounds like an oxymoron, but bring some joy to the workplace. I don't think there's ever been a more pressing need right now for laughter and humor in the workplace.
You remind me, I'll throw one more question your way. Years ago, I was at a session, I was a presenter, and the guy before me killed it, so that's always terrible. But one of the things he said is, audience of 1,000 people, we're not in the problem identification business. It's easy to see what's negative, what's wrong, what's dividing us, but how do you bring about the solution? And humor can be the solution. Is that one of the key takeaways in your view, that humor can be the solution?
Absolutely. Humor is what has brought us together from the beginning of time. So no matter, except maybe the Cro-Magnons and the Neanderthals who didn't get along well, but for the most part, laughter brings us together. And God knows we need to come together right now as a country, and certainly each individual organization. Many are going through a lot of difficult times right now, a lot of downsizings. So I'm not saying that laughter and humor is the perfect antidote after you just fired 3,000 people, but think about ways in which you can turn that reality around and get rid of the survivor guilt and find ways to inject some upbeat messaging. But again, it emanates from the top. And if the CEO is not comfortable in his or her skin, it's not going to work.
Great. Well, I appreciate you taking time to speak with us today. John will be writing this up in the O'Dwyer's newsletter, and we will have a recording available probably tomorrow, which we'll send out to everybody who registered and attended. Any closing thoughts after all that?
I have to plug my upcoming book. So HarperCollins has signed a professional comedian and yours truly to write a book rather. We'll sign it as well, but the book will be called The ROI of LOL, The Power of Laughter in Business. HarperCollins is publishing it and will be out after Labor Day.
Okay. Well, we'll ask John to make sure that that's included in an upcoming O'Dwyer's edition. Perfect back-to-school gift.
Exactly.
Thank you, Steve. Well, I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks for the opportunity, Tony. You take care.
You too. Thanks.